From Broadwell Green, running uncluttered between unremarkable hedges and fields, the road leads to sleeping Evenlode. We never make it there. We turn at a junction where Gloucestershire fields meet Oxfordshire skies, and after a green mile lies Addlestrop. We take time to stop and contemplate the rural calm, and know again that strange charm of cottages of Cotswold stone. But for all those silent histories they have known, no ghost remains of platforms where once stopping trains disturb the calm of a summer afternoon. A lifetime later, in a different June moment, an ancient oak overshadows a plain wooden shelter where those drawn here by a name find it on an antique sign enshrined in GWR chocolate and cream. These days no sudden hiss of steam breaks the silence as we sit alone on the platform bench grown as old as the poet's words. The sky is clear, the birds sing still in the fragile air, and on a modest plaque there the verse displayed, an eloquent epitaph for lives and lines unspent.
Say no to warm beer. I thought, yeah, I can go with that. But when I looked at it carefully, it was for ice cold. Well, I can't be doing the ice cold beer. It's not natural. I don't care when anybody says it is not natural ice cold beer. Sorry for drinking it, but it has to be said. So, it occurred to me that we need to say these things sometimes. And all the things that have been won for ordinary people have come from popular protest. Direct action, they like to call it this time. So this is my thanks to all those people who've gone before us to get the liberties and the freedoms that we take for granted these days. It's called Say No to Cold Beer. Say no to cold beer. Say no to cold beer. Raise the voice of protest. Raise it loud and raise it clear. Raise the beer-soaked banner high and sing until our throats are dry. Though drinkers flinch and boozers sneer, we'll say yes to pork scratchings and no to cold beer. Say no to cold beer. Say no to cold beer. Shout it from the highest height till your lungs are fit to burst. Keep the faith and fight the fight. Refuse to be coerced. Drinkers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your thirst. Say no to cold beer. Say no to cold beer. We came with the Kentish rebels and fought to be set free. We carried the pike and the musket to forge democracy. We gathered in Tolpuddle in the cause of liberty. We changed ourselves to railings to demand equality. We marched with the lads from Jarrow in desperate poverty. We raised our song to ban the bomb and march with CND. We stood against the poll tax in the days of Mrs. T. Now we say no to cold beer and have it served cool and clear at exactly 12 degrees C. Say no to cold beer. Say no to cold beer. I have a dream, my friends, that the time is drawing near when greed and hate and ignorance will one day disappear, and we'll live in peace and harmony, and there'll be no more cold beer.
I also like to find poetry in places, unexpected places. You know, found poetry is a very old and I'm sure very well respected type poetry to enjoy. So I find poetry in all sorts of places. This is one I found on the wall of a men's toilet. That's true. It was in the form of wallpaper that was on the toilet in a hotel, a very nice hotel. And this wall was covered, this toilet was papered with this wallpaper, and it was all about And I particularly wanted to dedicate this one to Richard. It's about fish.
Fantastic.
Because I know
You
you have a
swine.
particular affinity with our Piscean friends, you know. So this is for you. And the pattern on the wallpaper was a picture of a fish, and then some facts about the fish. And this is what it said. Now the rule with found poetry is you're not allowed to change it. You can't miss bits out and turn it. It's got to be just as it was when you found it. So this is called, titled is Toilet Paper. And there are 4 sections, and I promise this is what I say. So, but I'll so what do you think? Trout, all day, rapid clear streams, running over rocks or pebbles or gravel, in all parts, but mostly in the sticklers. If cold, at a few inches from bottom, hot mid-water and surface, February if mild, to October, artificial flies, minnows, bleak, gudgeon, worms, grasshoppers, beetles, wasp grubs and gentles, and artificial grubs, green and white. Perch. Midday cloudy days, bright weather, early and late, deep rivers and ponds, holes any weed 6 inches from bottom, or mid-water February to middle of October, redworms, caddisworms, brandlings, flagworms, minnows, small gudgeons, yellow frogs. Barbel. From sunrise to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to sunset, rapid and shallow streams, gravelly banks, under bridges, in currents, touch ground or very near it. April to October, cheese paste and honey, gentles, worms, grebes, boiled. Pike. Afternoon in winter, midday in rivers, lying under banks, out of the stream, slow streams, ponds among weeds, mid-water July to end of February, in wintry weather, gudgeon, small roach, dace, etc., large and very gaudy artificial flies.
And now we have Paul and Meryl Elwell, superb wordsmiths. Give them a good hand, you're really going to enjoy them.
No, I think I'll be alright. Is that alright? Halloween. We all know it's been sanitised, Disneyfied. It's just for kids these days, isn't it? Dressing up. So this is a children's poem. It's called The Last House on the Street. 3 children out on a frosty night, doing trick or treat. The game was almost over, just the last house in the street. The pale grey moon was shining, the frost was crystal clear, but at the last house in the street, there was no moonlight here. The iron gate creaked open with an eerie kind of moan. The house loomed dark and dismal. The path was overgrown, with weeds and thorns and brambles standing 10 feet tall, with something dark and twisting growing up the wall. They crept up to the dark front door with the huge brass dragon's head, and they knocked. The whole house seemed to shake. Trick or treat, they said. Slowly, the door drew open, and in the lights from the hall stood a kindly-faced old lady who'd heard the children's call. Oh, what delightful costumes, the best I've seen for years. I've been waiting for you to call on me. Please come inside, my dears. Now their wise and loving parents had warned them of the danger of accepting gifts of sweets or going into the house of a stranger. But They seemed unable to resist, and happily stepped in. The door clanged shut behind them, and the old lady said with a grin, "You look as cold as ice, my dears. Your noses are bright blue. Come with me and don't be shy. I've a special treat for you." They followed down the winding hall in flickering candlelight to the kitchen, where their eyes grew wide at a most remarkable sight. Plates and plates of tempting things, chocolates, cakes and sweets. "Eat whatever you want, my dears, for I promised you special treats." Their greedy eyes stared open wide, so it's odd they never saw a broomstick and an old black cat lurking behind the door. "Now, my dears," the old girl said, "before you start to eat, some things will play a trick on you, and some will give a treat." "They look so lovely," one child said, "it's impossible to choose." "But that's the fun," the old girl said. "Who'll win and who will lose? You chose to have your fun tonight, playing trick or treat. You chose to knock on the dark front door of the last house in the street. You chose to come into my house. Now a lesson must be learned. For if you play with fire, you'll get more than your fingers burned." It's the promises we keep, my dears, and the promises we break. What matters when all's said and done are the choices that we make. The first one chose a bright pink sweet and said, "I'm feeling weird." He slowly began to fade away till he completely disappeared. Where's he gone?" his sister said. "What's happened to my brother?" "He chose badly," the old witch said. "Now you must choose another." She chose a sticky toffee sweet, and as soon as she started to chew it, she too began to fade away and was gone before she knew it. The third one looked at all the plates and said in a thoughtful voice, "Sometimes it's best to stop and think before you make a choice." Then suddenly she grabbed 2 sweets and said, "I've had a wild idea." And having eaten both at once said, "It's worked! Look, I'm still here." "A clever trick," the old witch said. "And so your treat will be one wish, which I will grant for you. Now choose it carefully. If you can, turn back the clock to the moment just before we came to the last house in the street and knocked on your front door. Close your eyes," the old witch said, "and slowly count to 10, and you'll be where you want to be when you open them again." 3 children out on a frosty night, while the pale grey moon still shone, and when they came to the end of the street, the last house had gone.
And now for Meryl.
No, I'll just do this. Do it from here if you can hear me. This is a story called Some Enchanted Evening. Tom Pendlebury was feeling particularly resentful that evening. He sat at the piano and began to play one of his own compositions. Normally it soothed away most of those disquieting moments, but today he sighed out loud and felt more than a little sorry for himself. Cedric and Tom were identical twins, a fact their mother Ethel never failed to exploit, especially when they shared a musical talent. "Of course, they get it from me," she boasted. Their lives had been spent as a fairly successful double act, never quite Flanagan and Allen, but their popularity during the war and shortly after it had remained high. But no, it was 1953, and although times had changed, they hadn't. Frederick's voice had emerged from a boy soprano into a rather nice rich baritone, and Tom's fingers tinkled the ivories quite splendidly. Their mother had proclaimed their talent to anyone who'd bothered to listen or not fast enough to get away. Tom had never been interested in acting, but occasionally Cedric had appeared in the odd play or two, even a musical, something that Tom showed rarely any notice of. But each felt they had the real talent, they were the real star, and tried not to be too patronising to their less talented twin. But, yesterday, Tom had had a quite shocking encounter with Cedric. Since their childhood, they'd sulked and flounced a bit when they disagreed, but rarely rowed or raised their voices. But yesterday, Cedric had wanted a word. "I'm going away after Christmas and the New Year," Cedric had announced. "Yes, a holiday. Good idea. Where should we go?" Tom had asked. "It's not a holiday," Cedric said quietly. "It's just for me. I've auditioned for South Pacific. I'm playing Emile." Tom asked where, when, for how long? The usual questions. "Look," Cedric explained, "it's a 6-month tour at least, and we're doing Broadway." It wasn't a village hall in the Cotswolds. This was the Broadway Cedric was heading for. "We've had some good years together," Cedric smiled, "and this is my big chance. You can see that, can't you? Surely." "But what about me?" Tom asked. But Cedric had already left the room. What amazed Tom the most was that he hadn't seen it coming. They were identical twins after all. All their lives they'd had that psychic connection. They'd known what each other had felt and thought instinctively. When Cedric had fallen over, aged 7, and broken his ankle, Tom was in searing pain too. Tom's rumbling appendix had left Cedric with the exact same symptoms. They were almost one body, one brain. So how now could Cedric be so selfish, so devious, so utterly independent? What would become of him now, Tom thought? He'd never felt so utterly betrayed. Somewhere he remembered some plasticine from childhood days. He fashioned it easily, quite quickly, into the shape of a doll, and gave it an extra large head to house Cedric's enormous ego. Nothing too serious, he thought generously. Perhaps a sore throat, even a damaged vocal cord or two, he thought. Just enough to make sure that tour of the United States and South Pacific was impossible. Nothing permanent, he assured himself. So, with the delicate precision of a talented musician, he stuck the pin into the doll's throat. He'd already placed a glass of champagne by his side to toast his clever revenge. He took a large sip, eagerly, and as it slipped down his throat, the burning pain had taken him by surprise. He clutched at his throat, but no sound came. Tom was unable to call out, unable to summon help, and he fell to the floor in abject agony. The doll lay quietly on the table, next to the champagne glass, in the evening light. It had fulfilled its role fairly well, but sadly, it was not quite a sophisticated doll, and not good enough yet to tell the difference between identical twins.
Woo!